Welcome to another edition of In Your Pocket with thanks to GameFace and Valley Vicious, covering all things footy across the Outer East. Some huge matches across the division, some key players signing with some very good clubs as well in terms of our premiership contention. But we'll kick it off by introducing our panel first of all. And our panel, Lee Lawrence, Liam Vertigan and Quinn DeLuca with us. Lee, first of all, thanks to you for joining us. Our buy, swap and sell will be interesting a little bit later. We had some really big contests and Div 2, Div 1, Premier Division. We had heaps of key talking points.
Yep, great to be back again, mate, and another great week of local footy.
Liam, welcome. Where did we find you? You're often out doing the local footy circuit. What games did you take in?
Oh, I didn't take in any of the games on the weekend. I had a week away from it, fortunately, but looking forward to the game I'll be at this week, which will be Alexandra and Kinglake, which is the top two clash in Division 2, which will be a cracker, no doubt. Two
sides sitting at 7-1 and both coming off victories. And Quinn DeLuca, we've got you along as well. Plenty of talking points, some player movements as well, which is going to make some strong teams stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were talking about it before. We got Beaconsfield get with another player that's applied for a transfer. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes down. But exactly right. Strong teams just seem to find a way to get stronger and stronger.
Yeah, and obviously with an undefeated start, that does really strengthen their position. We'll get to that as we draw closer to that division. A big thank you to Lilydale Jeep, also to Woodards Manningham, Growth Syndicates Australia, and Doncaster East and Templestowe Community Bank branch for their support of the Premier Division. We'll kick it off with Div 2. Liam did mention that Alexandra and Kinglake will play each other this week, and we'll have a chat about that in a moment. But both of them sit 7-1 after significant wins. Kinglake, a hard-fought win over Yarra Glen in tough conditions. Yarra Glen wouldn't have lost many fans out of that. Warburton competitive at home against Alexandra, but Alexandra too strong. Yarra Junction thumping Broadford, who continue to battle. Yarra Junction winning that one by 133 points. And Powertown, who are really motoring, particularly coming out of the little COVID break, belting Yay by 77 points. Lee, your standouts amongst that? I think our top two is clear, but team sitting third in Powertown, putting themselves right in that chat.
Yeah, definitely. That third, fourth and fifth position is really up in the air. It seems every week with Division 2 that there's always two close games and then two games that are a bit further apart. I actually got up to the Kinglake Yarra Glen game in, I think it was pretty wet everywhere around the league, but up at Kinglake, that ground had copped a hide in, and it was a real tough battle for both teams. Yarra Glen were in it for most of the game. And possibly could have gone either way, but yeah, really good game. Kinglake got the points in the end, but both teams still have a few injuries. So, come finals time, I think it could go either way. The Warby-Alex game, as you said, was really tight. With Alex just proven again that they are the best team in the comp at the minute.
Liam, where do you put Powertown in your conversation? So they obviously were able to beat one of those top two at their last outing and then thumped a side they're expected to beat pretty comfortably, but we're wondering when it might all click together. It's starting to get there.
Yeah, they're starting to look really, really good, as Lee said, or as you said. They're really starting to become a side to be reckoned with, particularly after that COVID break. I think, this is just from a personal perspective, I'd be interested to see what you think, Lee, just going back on it. I think that top three could just about be the top three going into the back end of the season and finals. I think 4 and 5 is going to be a jostling position to see who finishes where. I think Powertown can be a top 3 side. I don't know what you think, Quinn. I might come to you on that as well. But they're coming good at the right time, as we've mentioned, and I think they've got a pretty good fixture coming into the back end of the season that could really solidify that third position and maybe even second if one of those top teams stumble.
I think we'll get the answer to that question this week because Yarra Glen play Powertown over at Powertown. If Yarra Glen can manage to knock Powley off over there, I would pencil them in for a top 3 finish.
Quinn, your thoughts on that? Yarra Glen are the interesting watch. They've beaten by Kinglake by 13 points, but competitive. And as Lee said, we'll find out a bit about whether they can break into that group.
Yeah, absolutely. So Yarra Glen, I have a lot of faith in Yarra Glen from what I've seen so far. I think they're going to do quite well. But to touch on what you said, Liam, I do think Powertown is a top 3 side, and I've been holding on to them in my buy, hold and sell the last few weeks, and for good reason. I think they're going to storm home towards the finals in this later half of the year.
Looking at some of the key players out of that, we'll talk about some careers coming to a close as well, but we love those big bags of goals. We I think we even predicted a couple last week on the panel. But 2 players kicking 10 over the weekend. David Johnson from Yarra Junction, that was predicted by you.
Yep.
And Michael Folks at Powtown as well, kicking 10 of their 19 goals. But I think you said there'd be a double figure haul, and I think you even picked the player.
I think when these teams come up against the weaker sides, they're just no backman to match them, and these players are going to kick them bags. It's just going to continue to happen.
So Jay Welch has called time on his career. He's a premiership player at Yarra Junction, been at Broadford since 2019. We know the last couple of years have been a bit interrupted. Played in 2 VV Rett Syndrome Cup games. So he's called time, unfortunately, at a difficult period for the club with Broadford, Quinn, but has been a premiership player in the past at Junction in the competition.
Yeah, it's always sad to see a legend of the comp go like that. But he's been a worthy servant of the league and at a couple of clubs now. So congratulations to him on such a fine career. And Lee would be pretty happy with the fact that he's played in 2 Valley Vicious Rett Syndrome Cup games too, I'm imagining.
Yeah, he hasn't just played in 2. He's a ripper. Jay's always stayed in contact with me with everything I'm doing with Rett Syndrome and that, and always pushed the cause. He's been fantastic with what we do, and I'm rapt to have been around his time in playing, and just wish him all the best with his next steps he takes.
We spoke about David Johnson. He's the player of the round. Not just 10 goals. He had it 26 times, took 11 marks, used it at 84% efficiency, and picked up 210 of our Premier Data points as well. And we'll chat a bit more about those later on. The tips for this week, we'll start off with the match of the round, probably across any division, and one of the better games across local football, full stop, this weekend in Alexandra and Kinglake, who come together at 7-1. Quinn, I might start with you. These sides have played once this year already, with Kinglake getting the points on that occasion. Yeah,
exactly right. The Kinglake did get the points, but I think, as Lee spoke about before we started recording the show, is that Alexandra have been so strong, and I think they're going to continue to do that. And I think this will really separate the 2 teams after this weekend, and I think Alex is going to get the win.
Liam?
Yep, this is the league broadcasted game of the round as well, so that'll be very good to bring to the people who may be watching or listening over Saturday, that's for sure. I think, given that it's at home, I think Alexandra are going to win. There's going to be no doubt that Kinglake are going to throw everything at them. I think that would be just a complete and utter obvious that it's going to be a close game, I would imagine. But, Alexandra for mine.
Lee?
I reckon it's going to be a fantastic game again. I do think the last 2 weeks are going to hurt Kinglake a little bit. Couple of real tough games, and I think Alex will win this week.
Yeah, I'm thinking Alex too. They might have established themselves as the one that sort of come out of the break as the front runner, but Kinglake can't be discounted clearly, and a hard-fought win in tricky conditions. They'd have lost the week before, but it wouldn't surprise me if that went either way. But I think Alex might have just established themselves. Another blockbuster. You did say, Lee, that we have 2 games that are usually pretty tight and a couple that might blow out. We might see that again here. Powtown versus Yarra Glen. Quinn, this is 3rd v4, so we've got 1v2 and 3v4.
Yep, and like I mentioned earlier, I have faith in both of those sides, although I do think Powtown, as I mentioned earlier, will storm towards finals, and I think they're going to do so by getting a good win over Yarra Glen this week.
Yeah, Powtown at home for mine. If it was at Yarra Glen, I'd just about change my mind and say Yarra Glen, but yeah, Powtown at home for me.
Yeah, going to be a fantastic game again. No love lost here between these 2 teams, and that 3rd spot really is up for grabs. Yarra Glen have got a couple of blokes to come in this week that missed out last week, and I'm going to tip Yarra Glen to win.
I think they can certainly win. Going to tip Powley, but Yarra Glen is the one to really watch for me this weekend. We'll find out a heck of a lot about where they sit in the broader scheme of things. Broadford against Warburton. So Broadford still chasing their first win. Warburton were pretty good last week against good opposition, certainly competitive in defeat. Quinn, do Warburton go to Broady and get the points?
Yeah, you'd imagine so. I do really want to give Broadford a chance, but I haven't seen anything from them this year to give them a chance. I think Warburton will take the win.
I would love to say Broadford, but I think, Warburton Millgrove will just be too strong for them.
Warby will win, but they've got to keep in mind it's a fair trip over to Broady, and a few teams have done it, and taking them a little bit too easy. You just can't do that. Warby will win, but I'm not sure by how much.
Yeah, Brody, I think, would look at the fixture and perhaps fire themselves up thinking it is a legitimate chance. And Warburton, their ladder position suggests they're gettable, but I thought they were good enough last week to suggest there's still a gap between those two sides. Yay and Yarra Junction. Quinn, Yarra Junction have to win if you look at the season and where it all sits for them.
Yeah, exactly. And Liam said before that there's going to be that hustle and bustle between 4th and 5th on the ladder. And this is where I think Yarra Junction are going to have to really put their foot down and get these wins that they should be doing. So, yeah, they'll knock off Yay this week.
Oh, they'll just win, Junction.
Junction easily scathed to kick another 10.
There we go. We're doubling down on the double figure predictions. And yes, I would agree with that. I think Yarra Junction will get the victory and keep themselves in touch, particularly if Yarra Glen were to get beaten. That would be a nice double for them out of the weekend. We look towards Division 1 where we had a heap of arm wrestles, so sort of low-scoring, tight contest where Berwick Springs were able to get the job done over Belgrave, keeping them winless. And had they have kicked straighter Berwick Springs, they could have done a bit more damage in that game. Mount Evelyn, too good for Emerald, 22 points up there. Gembrook winning a thriller against Seville. That was one of the matches we really did look forward to across the weekend. And Officer taking down Monbulk for their first loss of the season. Officer did feature in buy, hold and sell last week, but Lee, only about 4 or 5 goals across the margins there, but I would imagine that last one, or the last two probably, Officer and the Gembrook victories really did stand out.
Yeah, there's a lot that's standing out there. For mine, first up is the Officer win over Monbulk. That's really set them up for this season. I think the next couple of weeks they've got a couple of easier games. So and Mount Evelyn getting the job done against Emerald also is a fantastic effort. Obviously, Gembrook and Seville, I think they're going to be real tight all year, and that game could have gone either way.
And it leads to a 2-game gap between them on the table. Liam, what did you make it out? Mount Evelyn obviously secure a bit of a break at the top of the table, and by extension, the likes of Emerald and Seville lose a bit of ground.
Yeah, well, obviously a bit of a advantage of sorts for Mount Evelyn having played the extra game, but I think a concern maybe a little bit is the fact that they have an extended away period now with the reconstruction of their facility out there at Mount Evelyn. I would almost say as well that top 4 could be your top 4 going through.
I was just about to say that. I think that's set. I think the only real battle is out of Emerald and Seville, who's going to finish 5th.
And less as well that top 6 does end up happening as well. They'll be your teams. But if not, and we stay at the 5, I think Seville and Emerald will be the team that would fight out that 5th spot.
And obviously Monbulk and Gembrook with the draw between them as a result of what we were talking about last week with the reduced game or the early finish in that game. But Quinn, I guess your standouts looking across that. Emerald competitive but missing a chance at home against Mount Evelyn.
Yeah, Emerald are a very good side, and like we said, they'll be battling for that 5th spot, I imagine. But Mount Evelyn are just too good, and that's probably why they're sitting top of the ladder. And then I guess the other standout for the week is definitely Officer knocking off Monbulk, who were top of the ladder at the time, and that's a big statement to the rest of the competition, I think, from Officer.
And they are making a move, Lee. Do you feel, and based on what Liam was saying, with the difficulties that Mount Evelyn are going to face and the fact that Officer have now beaten one of the top sides fairly comfortably, could we be looking at them at the end of the season as potentially being the pick of the 4?
Yeah, definitely. Their past 3 weeks, month of football has been fantastic. I've spoken to Nick quite a lot, and he did mention that they were going to bring it home strong, and I think they're going to.
Taking a look at our player of the round, and it is Josh Molden, who put 38 possessions up, 10 rebounds. 29 of those were kicks at 73% efficiency and 151 Premier data points for he. So as we look across that Division 1, he's our player of the round. Josh Molden there, an absolute picnic. We look to the tips for this weekend. Seville get their crack at Mount Evelyn. So as we say, another away game for Mount Evelyn. Seville losing to Gembrook narrowly in the top 3, Quinn. This is another opportunity against the top side, and they probably need to pinch one of these somehow.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if Seville really want to make a case of themselves going into finals, this is the opportunity to do so. Mount Evelyn are such a great side sitting top of the table, but I don't think they will. I think Mount Evelyn are going to roll them here.
I have tipped Mount Evelyn this week, but I'm not going to discount Seville as they took it up to Officer 2 weeks ago and could have quite nearly won that game if it wasn't for a couple of goals late in that third quarter, as we know. But yeah, I'll tip Mount Evelyn, but Seville aren't completely out of it for mine.
Yeah, it's going to be a really close game. These two teams are definitely a fairly decent rivalry there. A lot of players have played at each club and gone back and forth. This is going to be a really good game. Mount Evelyn will win, but not by a lot.
Yeah, I agree with all of those sentiments. I think Mount Evelyn a little bit too good, but Seville showed in their game against Gembrook, and that was away from home, that they can certainly be right amongst it in these big matches. Some joy will come the way of either Healesville or Belgrave this weekend, provided it's not a draw. But Healesville looking for their second win, Belgrave looking for their first. Quinn, how do you see this? Healesville coming off a bye.
Yeah, well, this is Belgrave's probably best ever chance at a win for the rest of the season, you'd imagine. Although if it was at Belgrave, I'd probably be giving it to them. Although I think at Healesville's home ground, with the crowd that can get there sometimes as well, I reckon Healesville will get the job done.
Yep, same as Quinn. If it was at Belgrave, I'd tip Belgrave, but it's at Healesville, so I'll tip the Bloods.
I'll tip the Bloods by a bit. I just think Belgrave are just down a little bit further than the rest of the teams.
They've got a few blokes playing well, Belgrave, but just not enough. I think Healesville will win that game, and I agree. Had it been at Belgrave, it might have been a slightly different story, but just looking at percentages and some of the scoring numbers across the way, Belgrave's defence, I think, just having a hard time containing big scores from the opposition. Berwick Springs and Officer. So Berwick Springs coming off a good victory over Belgrave, but Quinn, this is another step up on the challenge stakes.
Absolutely. The challenges doesn't get much bigger than this, but I think, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Officer will win this one.
Yep, Officer.
Yep, Officer again.
Yeah, probably by plenty. Gembrook and Emerald, a good game at Gembrook. So back-to-back home games for Gembrook, who beat Seville by 3 points. And they play another team at a similar level, we believe, in terms of their chances this year in Emerald, who had a competitive home hit out against Mount Evelyn. So certainly falls, Quinn, under the banner of a danger game for Gembrook.
Yeah, definitely. Emerald, no one to look down upon. They're definitely a great side, and I'm going to tip him here. It's probably against the odds playing it away as well at Gembrook, but I think they're going to want to bounce back and prove a point to the rest of the comp, and I reckon they might just jump Gembrook.
No, I'm going to disagree with you, Quinn, unfortunately. I think the Brookers will get the job done. Not by an awful lot, but they'll just get it done.
It's not actually at Gembrook, though, is it?
It's at the other ground.
It's
Heather Brave.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to tip Emerald.
Yeah, tight game. I think Gembrook just across the board, marginally stronger, and they've been prominent in my buy, hold and sell of recent weeks, despite obviously the dramas they had at their last start. The Premier Division, Beaconsfield, will dig a little bit deeper into their recruiting that we were talking about earlier, but they've belted Upway by 56 points, probably as expected. We knew the blockbuster would be Cranbourne Narry, and it proved to be the case, obviously in tricky-ish conditions, but Cranbourne winning that one by 2 points. Warriallic with a great result against Pakenham, winning that one by 22 points. And Olinda Ferny Creek with the blowout of the round, beating lowly Wandon by 109 points in that contest. Lee, your summations of that? Obviously, Cranny Narry was a huge contest.
Oh, definitely. Fantastic game. And these two teams will just go at it every time, and it's always going to be a close game. Beaky are just getting the job done, doing what they need to do. My highlight of this round was the Woori game. Heading over to Pakenham, backs against the wall, getting up with a fantastic win. Joshy Neal kicking 3. Woori, they're having a crack. You've got to admire them. And the same goes to Olinda, who easily disposed of Wandon. Olinda are starting to really play some decent footy.
Yeah, they are. That's a great result to get an away win against a very highly fancied opponent. Liam, what were your takeaways from that? And Olinda, obviously, they've beaten up on a side that's towards the bottom of the table, but they've also capitalised on Pakenham's loss. Yeah,
we were talking about it before we went on record this afternoon, that is just a really disappointing loss for Wandon. I actually tipped them to win that game. It was at a neutral venue in Warriallic, but credit to Olinda Ferny Creek for getting the job done there. They're only a game out of the top 3 now, which is a magnificent effort so far. If they can get up into that top 3, I would not be writing them off at all. And credit to Cranbourne for getting the job done what would be tough conditions, knowing that Narre Warren ground, and they've lost 2 narrow ones in a row, Narre Warren, so that could come back to bite them perhaps later on in the year.
Just one thing with that, I think the Wandon didn't score a goal until late into the last quarter. So that's where you're just nearly throwing the towel in stuff. Like,
Do you give them any chance of winning a game this year?
well, I think they've got their best chance this week against Dufton. They have to win that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll find out. Obviously, the percentage hadn't been too bad. They'd been competitive in defeat until that game. Obviously, that was the blowout. Their losses hadn't read too poorly prior to that one, sort of averaging 5-6 goals, somewhere around about that mark. So that was certainly a messy one for them. Quinn, you mentioned earlier that the Beaconsfield is a game clear atop the table with a percentage of nearly 300, undefeated through 6 matches. They're likely to land or have landed another big key position player, a big ruckman, who's been a league best and fairest winner.
Absolutely. He's a 3-time league best and fairest winner. I think Liam knows slightly more than I do about him, but this just shows how desperate they are and how how much they want to take it all the way and win it this year. And they've been treating every game like it's a grand final. So the coach said at one point during an interview with, I think, the Herald Sun it was. So they're very determined this season, and I think going out and picking up a big ruckman this late in the season just shows that as well.
Yeah, the quote was, "We haven't done anything for 7 years, so we don't know what's going to happen with COVID. We could be locked down again in 4 weeks' time. Each game we play is a grand final for us." Liam, can you shed some light for some of the Beaky fans as to what they're getting?
Yeah, so scrolling through the depths of Facebook this afternoon, I came across a post from the Ovens and Murray Football Netball League streamer, which is 2AY Radio up on the border. Scott Meyer is his name. He's from the Wodonga Raiders Footy Club. They're going all right, the Raiders. They're sitting in 3rd position in the Ovens and Murray at the moment, and he's lodged a clearance to come to Beaconsfield. He's a 3-time Ovens and Murray Footy League best and fairest, and he has got some past games for Beaconsfield under his belt when he was a part of their interleague side where he got a best on ground medal there back when it was in the South Eastern Footy League. So obviously if they land him and he's a ruckman, and it's going to go a long way for their premiership credentials, obviously.
It certainly is, and they've obviously got some stars in there as well. Nick Battle, the player of the round, 37 touches, 11 clearances, 6 inside 50, 17 contested and 166 Premier data points. We'll go through the tips and then we'll discuss a couple of other things as well. The tips, first of all, that Upway game against Olinda Ferny Creek. Quinn, how are you separating that?
I think it's going to be an interesting game, but like we spoke about earlier, Olinda are just flying at the moment, and I think they're not one to count down and out, so yeah, Olinda will get this one for me. They
could be knocking on the door of the top 3 here. They should beat Upway Tacoma, I think.
Yep, I think they'll continue their form from last week. Lee?
Yeah, Olinda comfortably.
Narre and Beaconsfield, another huge game. Narre, as we say, have lost a couple of close ones. Beaconsfield are the benchmark side. We'll find out, obviously, that the gap effectively between them, if one exists this week, Quinn.
That's it. I think Narre are going to be desperate to win this one. Like we mentioned, they've had a couple of close losses this year that might hurt them later in the season, so you'd hope at their home ground they'd take it right up to Beaconsfield, but when a team's gone undefeated all season, it's hard to tip against them, and I'm not going to tip against them this week, so I think Beaconsfield will get the job done.
Narre will be very, very hungry to win a game, and I still think they've got a pretty good opportunity to win it here. But having said that, Quinn made some magnificent points. When you're on fire the way that Beaconsfield are, if you get a win on Saturday, you're just going to put a further and further gap in front of everyone else, and I think they will win.
Yeah, this should be another fantastic game. It'll be real tight, but Beaky will get up.
We read from the Beaky coach, treating every game like a grand final. This one could be that. I'm just going to give Narre a slight chance. They've been competitive. Beaconsfield haven't done a thing wrong, but there a couple of times they've been slightly gettable and just found ways to work their way through. And I think Narre will get a look at them and might be able to pinch a tight game and arrest that run of recent close defeats. Wandon and Doveton, best chance, Quinn, for Wandon, whose percentage is actually better than Doveton's, and as we say, have generally been more competitive, except for last week.
Yeah, absolutely. Other than last week, they have been competitive every week, and the game is at their home ground as well, so I'm going to give it to them. I'm going to tip Wandon this week. It's probably their only chance for the rest of the season, and they'll know that, and they'll be pretty hungry to come out and get a win, so I'm going to give it to them.
Yeah, I tipped Wandon myself here. It's their best possible chance to win, and if they get the win, those new club rooms will cop an absolute flogging.
They just need to win, don't they, Wandon? Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to. I think Doveton will win.
I'll split it to Doveton coming off the bye, and Wandon obviously pretty ordinary last week, and hopefully they can bounce back, but obviously hard to have that level of faith. Cranbourne and Warriellic, Quinn, can Warriellic do it again? Can they go on the road and beat another good side?
I wouldn't count them out completely, although I just think Cranbourne are going to be too strong, and I wouldn't be tipping against Cranbourne, not at their home deck.
Yeah, Warriellic are having a red-hot crack, as Lee mentioned before, but travelling down there to Cranbourne, I think the travel might take it out of them.
Yeah, I really do admire this Warrior unit, that he's only getting better and better, but I think Cranbourne's just a bit too hard, Cranbourne to win.
Cranbourne for mine as well. An interesting conversation which has filtered down from the highest level to the lower levels from the AFL all the way down, and that is whether umpires need more training or perhaps more support. It's been a cause of controversy. We obviously always wish to be careful in the sense that the game can't exist without umpires, and you're encouraging them to get involved at any level, but it's more also about protecting them as well. So a lot of games have been decided due to umpiring decisions that are questionable. We've had umpires drop off in numbers like most things have done since the COVID pandemic began. Do we need to provide more attention, funding, coaching towards the training and hiring of umpires? The game's quite confusing, and I think umpires sometimes fall victim to that with rule changes and interpretations. Often they're doing it exactly as they're told to do it, but fans don't necessarily know the tweaking of that interpretation. It appears that a decision is incorrect. It is one of the harder jobs in the game, and we've even seen at AFL level matches decided a few times this year by some poor umpiring decisions. But Lee, what's your view on that? Is the level of umpiring improving at the same level that the standard of footy is?
Well, firstly, but this is nothing about bashing the umpires or anything like that. It's not their fault. In my opinion, I don't think they're trained well enough. I don't think they're paid well enough. They're undermanned, and they're going out to games pretty much just not knowing who they're working with, how it's going to work. I think as a whole, the AFL need to put a bit more money into umpiring and try to get it right, because at this stage, it's nowhere near the level it should be.
I got to tread carefully in what I say here myself. I think just good group cohesion in general is something you need. I mean, if you have the same group of 4 or 5 or 6 umpires every week, your 2 field, your 2 goal and your 2 boundary, that normally stick together, you get to know each other a little bit better, you know what your rule takings are like, and you know what sort of role you play. I think if you keep that sort of thing together and not split people up week by week, you might get some better, decision-making results and that sort of thing. And you don't really want to see, people dropping off into the way that we have volunteers from football clubs umpiring important games as well. That's just...
I think one of the biggest things that we really need to try and push, and this is when players have finished up playing, let's push them into the umpiring role, because they're the best umpires. They're the people that we want doing it. I know a lot of blokes after they finish playing footy, probably the last thing they want to do, but it would be fantastic to see a few ex-players getting out there and umpiring.
Yeah, and it can keep you in the game for 10 years longer than you otherwise would be. And I think that's the absolute key, Quinn, is just the number of umpires that are coming through the ranks. So we've got more options, more of a cohesive system, but also more of a talent pool to pick from and develop.
Yeah, exactly. I think we do need to encourage more people to start umpiring, and with the COVID pandemic, like a lot of things, they've had numbers drop off pretty heavily, which is unfortunate because, like you said earlier, we can't have a game without the umpires. But footy was already a really hard sport to adjudicate, and especially with some of the rule changes we've had in recent years, and some of them have and some of them haven't filtered down to lower levels, but it's just making the game more and more confusing to adjudicate and adhere to. So I think some more training probably needs to be put in place, because these umpires, they're getting bashed from fans and players on the ground when the decision doesn't go their way, and you don't like to see it, because that's another reason why umpires are going to drop off, because no one wants to cop that. So I think the more that we can train them and put them in good stead, you'll start to see the numbers pick back up again, and everyone will be happy, I think. Yep,
absolutely. And as we say, one of the toughest jobs, but the most important job in footy. It simply doesn't exist without them. Buy, hold and sell coming off last week where we had a pretty good spread of sides. There was a couple that appeared fairly consistently through all of that, particularly on the sell side of the coin. Quinn, might give you the chance to open the bowling if you want. Who's your buy, hold and sell this week? Obviously last week you were buying Officer, holding Powelltown and selling Berwick Springs.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to buy Cranbourne. I haven't bought them yet, which is probably silly of me. They've been pretty good, so I'm going to buy Cranbourne this week. I'm holding Powelltown again. Because I think they're absolutely flying. And in terms of selling, I'm going to have to sell Wandon. I haven't sold them yet, so I'm going to be selling Wandon. I don't think... I know I tipped them before, which probably contradicts what I've said there, but I'm going to sell Wandon.
Yeah, they probably deserve that off the back of that last week. Liam, who's your buy, hold and sell?
I'll be buying into Beaconsfield. Doing very well for themselves down there at Home Park, obviously. Holding Officer, they're doing too well for Mind. And I also had Gembrook Cockatoo on there, so I can't sell them. So I don't think I'll be selling anyone this week if I'm allowed to do that. So
No, you can.
Gembrook Cockatoo are being held, and so are Officer. Two teams that are just trucking along all right, I feel, at the moment.
So a buy and 2 holds, Lee.
Oh, I'm probably going to lose a lot of money on buying Alex, but I haven't done them and I have to. They're doing everything right. So, yeah, I'm going to buy Alex. I'm going to hold on to Pakenham. You know, they didn't lose any fans last week with that Worry game, and they've got a bye this week. So, and I'm getting rid of Warby. They had to win and they just didn't.
Yeah, I think that's certainly fair. They were pretty good, but didn't get the results. So last week I bought Cranbourne, held Gembrook, and sold Yarra Junction. I'm buying Warri Yallock only on the basis of I just think the spirit and the effort. It's a type of stocks I think you want to have in something. I think they're really putting together a really concerted effort each and every week. I'm going to hold on to Yarra Glen. I think that it's a testing little period for them. They showed some good signs last week, and they've got another tough match to come. But there's enough to like about them to just have another look at them. And I'm not selling Pakenham because they're no good. I'm just selling them because I think that loss is going to hurt them a lot in the scheme of things when you look at that breakaway at the top. So I just think that's going to have a bit of an impact on them. Taking a look at the veterans as well and the results out of last week. So we had Narry and Mount Evelyn play out a thriller, and Turin and Delmore thumping Marysville. That match was on Sunday. Lee, and yeah, what did you make of those results? And obviously Gembrook and Healesville? Yeah,
the Gembrook-Healesville game, Gembrook forfeited halfway through the day. Obviously didn't have enough players. We did see Big Clarkey playing the ones for Gembrook, so I'm not sure with the rule in there is once you play a senior game, can you not play vets anymore?
I'm not 100% sure.
It would make sense.
Yeah. But it does, it would add up.
Yeah, well, so I don't know what's going to happen there, but obviously the Narry Warren and Mount Evelyn game was always going to be a real close contest, and it was right down to the wire in the end. We'll see these two in finals heavily, and great to see Turin get that big win over Marysville because that could have gone either way. Yeah,
and a big blowout for them, winning it by 58 points. Gembrook scheduled to play Marysville this week, next week on the 11th, so hopefully some good fortune there in terms of numbers. Healesville and Narry and Turin to play Mount Evelyn to see if Turin can continue their run off the back of that last result. A big thank you to Growth Syndicates Australia, to Woodards, Manningham, Lilydale Jeep, and Doncaster East and Templestowe Community Bank branch. Thank you to our team. Plenty of good matches to come this weekend. It's been in your pocket with thanks to GameFace and Valley Vicious, and we'll catch you again next week.